broadcasting live from our studio in Appleton, Wisconsin. You're tuned into Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. We're the show that gives you an opportunity to call in and be a part of the show. Our call-in line is 920-358-0795. Core. My next guests are a team behind one of the most warm and inviting recording studios in the Valley. It's known as Honeytone Studios. It's a place packed with vintage gear. It's in a historic mansion. And joining us to talk about the Honeytone sound, the art of analog, and how they help artists achieve their vision, I'd like to welcome Patrick and Jeff to Fox Cities Core. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I had the pleasure of taking a tour of the studio a couple weeks ago, and it blew away my expectations. It was way more than I was expecting. It's one of those places I think you almost have to step into to truly, especially if you're a music fan, to truly have to experience to get the whole vibe of the place. I'm looking really forward to talking to you guys about how this whole vision came to be and
Sure.
and how it's evolved over the years. But really quick, could you just say your name and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Patrick. Started the studio about 13 years ago.
I'm Jeff Patlingrao. I moved to the Valley in 2018 to join Honeytone. I came from New York, where I'm originally from, New York City. Yeah.
I find the studio, it's an old Victorian mansion, and we'll get into it. But first of all, I just want to say, Patrick, you've got a long history of music.
Yeah.
You were talking a little bit before about how you were a DJ at Eau Claire when you were going to school there.
Yeah.
Is it kind of fun to be back in a somewhat of a radio?
Yeah, this is a much more comfortable environment. We were just joking about how I had to do the television part too, and that was not my interest. I kind of stayed in the broadcast journalism area because of the radio side of it to get some audio production. Because once I started in print journalism, but I wanted to have more experience with audio as I decided that's kind of the direction I wanted to go. But rather than drop out of school or change majors, I just shifted to broadcast from print and then kind of took whatever opportunities I could. And I joined the radio station there, which was a lot of fun, getting new music in and DJing shows once a week. I had usually one or two co-hosts I always did it with, so that was a lot of fun and met a lot of great musicians during that time too.
Nice.
And you guys, of course, run the studio together, but Jeff, you were from New York.
Yeah.
And you were in Appleton for Mile of Music, it's another connection where Mile of Music brought people together.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of interesting because I was playing in a band out of Sheboygan called Cedarwell, and I met them years ago while they were on tour on the East Coast, and I became fast friends with them. We were on a bill randomly. I was playing a solo set, and they were on right before me, and I remember watching their set and just calling my friends, "You got to get here now. This band from Wisconsin's awesome." And then we became friends that night and started trading shows. And then eventually, I was already into recording. I had a home studio and I offered to record them. And then I also played on that recording. And then they brought me on tour eventually to Wisconsin in maybe 2006 was the first time I came out here. But he never took me to Culver's, which is weird. Anyway, eventually we weren't as active, but we would come together for the Mile of Music starting in 2015 for me. And then that was the only time we played as a band. It was almost like a summer camp reunion thing for that band. And for some reason, Mile always wanted us back. And one year, our mutual friend, Matt Holman, was recording at Honeytone with Patrick and the old team there and invited us over, and he specifically said Jeff and Patrick are going to be best friends. Like they need to meet because they're like
he was very adamant about that.
Yeah, and it was pretty immediate when I met Patrick and we opened that. And it's funny when you talked about needing to step into Honeytone, and it's always a treat for me to see people step into Honeytone for the first time because I was them. When I first stepped in, and I remember that feeling of being just looking around and seeing this inspiring gear and sort of finding a kindred spirit in Patrick. So it's always a kind of sweet reminder of that inspiration.
There's definitely a vibe when you walk in there. You can feel it.
Yeah.
Just how it's designed, like the not only the equipment, but just the whole feel of it.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, do you remember the first time when you were scouting out a place to open a studio? What drew you to that location?
Well, I had first seen it when my wife and I were looking at potential houses, and maybe originally thought of doing a creative space and a living space. But even though it's a large building, I don't know, it's nice to have that separation. I don't live at the studio. So that was when I first saw it. And then I looked at an old church. I looked at a podiatrist's office in Menasha. That was actually my favorite one because it had this huge cathedral ceilings, and all the exam rooms around the outside would have made great ISO booths. And the basement had a poured concrete slab floor and like nothing in it, so you could have made an echo chamber. I had a lot of visions, but the price just never worked out on that one. And then I was kind of looking for about a year and drove past the location we ended up in, and he was taking down the for sale sign, and I opened my window and yelled something to him, which I'm pretty shy, so I don't even know why I did that. But then he's like, I said something like, oh, too bad, I was looking for a place for, a studio. I was looking at this building, and he's like, oh, come on in and buy it. And so he was taking the for sale sign down because he was looking to start renting it, but he obviously preferred to sell. So I think from that day, it was like 5 days later, I owned it. It happened like very quickly.
It was a really quick turnaround.
Yeah. He was a great guy, Mark, who owned the house, and he spent most of his adult life kind of fixing the house up and restoring it. So it was kind of important. It had been in his family for a long time. It originally was his grandfather's and his uncle's, and then he inherited it. So I think he had a lot of pride in what he did, so I try to maintain that in the building too, and keeping it up and keeping the work that he did there. I don't paint over stuff, and keep the original stenciling up and using the picture rail instead of nailing stuff to the wall, things like that. So
it's a great space, and bands that record there, you offer the bands have the ability to stay at the house if they want to.
Yeah,
they don't even have to
lodging.
travel if they're.
Correct.
And you said some of the bands locally decide to stay there as well, just to not get out of that creative space.
Yeah, I think when you're there, you can kind of forget everything else and just focus on your music, and that was important. That was something we wanted to craft for people too. And we do get a lot of bands from Minneapolis, St. Paul, Chicago, sometimes Milwaukee, kind of regional, but also people from further away too at times. So it's important, I think, to have the lodging on site, and we don't charge extra for that. So
in 2012 was the year it officially opened.
Yep.
And prior to that, you were doing stuff at a home studio.
Yeah, Hewitt Street Sessions. So a couple times a year, we'd have friends over and turn my house into a studio, and started just people would bring in songs, and we'd decide who we would want to record or pick. And sometimes we'd do cover songs, but definitely learned a lot during those sessions. So I did intern at a couple studios when I graduated from college, but then learned a lot just by putting in the hours and doing it. So
when you had the actual space, how did that change your process?
I think it just evolved from where I was already at. I kind of had a fascination more with the analog process and using digital tools for what analog couldn't do, but also there's just something to me about the analog process and sometimes the limitations that breeds creativity. And I just love the sound of it and the tactileness of the analog world too. So
it's interesting because there was another analog studio, of course, in Appleton. Rock Garden was they could do analog, and they are no longer doing recording. You're like one of the go-to places now in the Fox Valley for people that are looking for that option to do analog recording.
Well, that's nice of you to say. I don't know if I ever think about it that way. But
Well, I mean, what are some of the things you like about analog?
Well, like I said, first of all, the process of it, having everything kind of out in front of you, and the sound, the fact that everything's kind of unique. You can have 5 analog compressors that are the same model, but because of tolerance drift and different things in the gear, getting on the nerdier side. But what that means for an artist is you can sound like yourself, but you can sound unique. You don't have to have everything. If you put a plugin on, that plugin's going to sound the same on mostly any computer. So I just like how every little step of the way, something's kind of unique and a little bit different about it. And the workflow is really nice too. I feel like when you're not, we do obviously use the computer and we use plugins too. So it's not like we don't have a computer screen.
Yeah, we do record to the computer.
Yeah, so it's not like we're strictly analog. But having as much of the analog process as we can, I feel like you're focused more on the music, less on visual. Like if I'm editing a waveform in the computer or changing volume, I feel like I do it in a different process than if I'm just turning a knob out in the real world. And it's more, in the real world, it's more about what you're hearing versus what you're seeing. And so the less I can look at the screen, the better. And it's also just fun. I enjoy working with analog gear, and I think bands appreciate that too. So, and the other thing is, all the equipment and the instruments. So, I mean, we have all the equipment for recording, but we also have drums and guitars and basses and effects pedals. So if someone has an idea or a sound that they're searching for, we can actually dig into those tools and help them create that sound in real time, which I think inspires how you play differently, rather than going into a DI into the computer and then adding some plugins later to make it sound like what you wanted, which they're all viable ways of working. I just prefer, the way we do it. So
yeah, we talk about intention a lot and how that's more important than capturing perfection.
Yeah.
I don't know what else I was going to say about that, but yeah.
Well, yeah, we were talking about that the other day, that you can try to get something perfect, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be compelling.
Right,
Whereas,
exactly.
if you're putting yourself out there, mistakes are okay if the intention's there, or if you've got more emotion or heart in the performance. So there's like a threshold for performance where, okay, this is good enough, but then in that extra area is the intention there. So like the technicality's there, but does it say what you want it to say emotionally, I guess?
Yeah, and the best question for artists is, what do you want it to feel like in this moment? Because we're going through time, and every moment in that timeline of the whatever piece of music it is or song, I want it to be purposeful, and everything that's happening is like pushing the song to its like purpose.
When you've got so much gear there, how do you decide if an artist explains to you what they're looking to do? Can they explain, I'm looking for this kind of feeling?
Yeah.
How do you guys go about finding that sound or the equipment that to realize their vision of what they're, like me, unable to articulate what I'm trying to say right now?
That's one of our favorite things to do, is to have this sort of, vagueness and abstractness are spectrums. So you can be, it can be abstract, and you describe a feeling, and because of our years and years of experience and familiarity with the equipment, we're able to conjure that or manifest it in, a physical, technical way. There can be times when we were like, I don't really know what you're saying to me, man. Maybe we could keep talking about it. And then we just try different stuff. But again, it comes from familiarity with the equipment. So we don't have to be technical. You know what I mean? Like, you have the I'm sorry. Hit the mic. You have the technical knowledge, but it's at a point where you don't need to use it.
Yeah, it's like on an instrument. You put the time in practicing, so when you're performing, you're not thinking in a technical term. You're just trying to express yourself because you've put that time in already. So kind of similar with the instruments, just spending time with everything, knowing about it. I mean, when we don't have sessions, Jeff and I are always busy doing stuff and, learning. And the equipment is pretty highly curated. We switch stuff in and out every year, and it's supposed to be purposeful as to, what we have and cover certain sounds. So the basic idea is just that if someone's traveling, they could come in and they wouldn't have to bring anything. And hopefully we've got everything that covers kind of every color in the spectrum. So
what do you think colors a tone more, effects pedals or amps?
I don't know. I mean, we have a lot of effects pedals, but the longer we do it, the less we use them. I mean, they both can color a tone, I would say, but sometimes it's just fun to hear somebody play through a nice amp, because sometimes a pedal is almost like similar to like the digital sense, where like certain pedals meld with an amp and you can hear someone's personality and their playing still come through. Other pedals, you like click it on and it's like, oh, it's that sound, and that kind of overtakes their playing or makes them play in a way that they wouldn't have played, which sometimes that's what you want and that's cool. But other times it's just more interesting to hear someone and their personality, because that's what's different, so.
Well, I had the privilege of looking into the pedal locker that you guys have, and I mean, the names, I can see why your expertise would be very useful, because some of the names of these pedals have nothing to do with the sound. So it's like, and there's literally thousands. I don't know how many you have. You probably have at least hundreds. How many pedals do you think you guys have at the studio?
I don't know. It's definitely more than 500 for sure. So it's like quite a bit. But I think also, I know we're talking gear, but I think sometimes the studio and the amount of gear can overlook Jeff and I as individuals and our experience. And I'm not necessarily saying it to pivot or change the subject. I'll talk about gear all day. But I also, the gear isn't really the important thing. It's the space, it's the time and that Jeff and I are putting together, and, just knowing how to use the gear, but also just knowing how to work with someone, and interpersonal skills are so important in a studio, which I think I see a lot of younger engineers. They're learning all the technical skills, but then when they get into a session, even like talking on a talkback mic, there's kind of an art to that, and supporting an artist, but also challenging them in a way that you get the best performance. And we care about all that stuff. It's not like we're just going to hit the talk back and be like, yeah, what do you think? It's like we're going to give people feedback, and especially if you're working with a band that doesn't have a lot of experience in the studio, is we try to make it as comfortable as possible, but that can get really daunting too. So trying to make somebody feel comfortable and welcome, but also challenging them to get the best performance. So,
Yeah.
Well, at the heart of Honeytone, not the stand gear, is your Neve console.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how that was your dream board? Can you tell me how you came about?
Yeah. So I don't know, was it like 7 years ago now about?
Yeah, a little bit more than that, because it was kind of right before I moved here.
Okay. Yeah. So I had a different console that I was using since the beginning and kind of outgrew it. That's also the nice thing about analog gear is you get to learn on it, and as things change, you can upgrade or change things out. But anyways, that board we kind of were outgrowing in McAllister College up in Minneapolis or St. Paul, I forget which city, but they were closing, and that was a music education school, so they had a bunch of consoles for sale. So I was looking at an SSL board and did a bunch of research on that, and so I called some gear brokers to try to figure out what prices would be, what would be reasonable. Tried to figure out how I could finance it, even talk to friends to see if anybody wanted to partner up and things like that, and then ended up going to the auction online, and the prices were insane. Like, people were bidding more than what stuff was going for. Like, if you even, like, they weren't all consoles. Sometimes it was like a piece of rack gear, and you could literally in real time while the auction is going on, look on eBay and find stuff for sale for less than what the prices are starting to get up to, and the auctions were just kept going. So it was pretty wild. So the board got way out of what I was willing to pay for it. And so when I was doing that research, though, I had called Sonic Circus, this dealer, and they told me about some other boards, because I think they contacted me just saying, like, hey, did anything ever happen with that board? And I said, no, it ended up not working. And I think I asked what else they had in stock, and they actually had a 5088 console, which was my dream board, and that was coming out of a Santa Barbara Sound in California, where they were using it. It's cool because it's a pretty modular board. So there's the input modules, and then there's meters, and then there's a section called the penthouse where you can put different mic pre's or EQs and compressors. So the penthouse portion was empty, but it was there, so I could kind of build as I could afford to add stuff to it. So we made a deal for the console, and couldn't have been a better choice. It's such a great console. I mean, what it means for artists is you can do anything on that board. You can record classical music. We've done soundtracks for animated films on that board. You can do hard rock music. You can do folk. It's just whatever you throw at it, it can do it. If you want it to be clean and have a ton of headroom, it can do that. If you want to saturate it more, it can do that. So it's just a dream to work on, and it's fun to work on. I really love having that board. So.
Yeah, the sound is beautiful on it. It's very warm. It's full. It gives the audio kind of a three-dimensional quality. I mean, it's funny because we say it's 3D, but what is that even? Like,
yeah,
it's an illusion, but it's an illusion, but it's a real illusion, I guess. And also, Kevin Costner has his voice has.
That's like our inside joke. When Jeff moved in, he gave me a signed picture by Kevin Costner. So it's like from Robin Hood, but with the Field of Dreams quote, and Jeff signed it. And
if you build it, yeah. Yeah, he did some voiceover work on the board at the old studio.
Which is kind of our inside joke, because so many people who get boards secondhand will cite all the stuff that was used on it, which is kind of fun and cool, but also it's like, does it really matter? Like, what are you doing with it now? I don't know. So it is fun. I mean, obviously knowing the history of stuff, but also as a company, Rupert Neve Designs is really fantastic, which is important to me because using analog gear, I mean, I think it gets a bad rap for being, a lot of maintenance or labor intensive, which it can be, but also you can be in the middle of a session and there could be an update on your computer and nothing's working. I mean, anyone who works in digital knows that that's not infallible. So, but they're a great company that really stands behind stuff. So whenever we have had issues or just general maintenance, we can send off just a single channel because it's all modular. And we've expanded and use a bunch of their other gear, their master bus converter, their compressors. So they're just fantastic. We kind of have a great relationship with that company. So
it really does add to the off factor when you walk into the control room and you see that sitting there.
And all the blinking lights are nice.
We had the comment from Frank Anderson. Who,
oh,
of course,
Frank.
has done
Frank.
A lot of work at the studio. He said an added plus is that Jeff is a multi-instrument master who can enhance the work of individual singer-songwriters who recorded at Honeytone.
Oh, thanks, Frank.
That's very true.
And Frank is one of those musicians in the area that has been at Honeytone a lot, adding his flavor to sessions. Is Frank one of the go-to guys you reach out to if somebody's looking for some good pedal steel?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, definitely.
Pedal steel and a good story.
Yes.
We reach out to Frank.
Yeah. We always make sure to carve out a little bit of extra time for the stories too, because we love them.
Yeah, definitely.
And what's great about Frank is he can do the traditional pedal steel stuff, but he can also do totally weird stuff, and he's game for all of it.
Like, yeah, and he always humors any of my suggestions, whether they're good or bad. He's like, oh yeah, sure, we can do that. Hopefully they mostly turn out pretty good, but he's always game for it. But Jeff's pretty masterful at deflecting.
I just did it masterfully, didn't I?
Frank called or messaged about.
Yeah,
but Jeff plays on a lot of sessions, and also part of what we like to do with bands is pre-production, and that's not anything we charge extra for. So usually it can be as involved or as little as bands want. So I mean,
tell me about what is pre-production.
Yeah, so in a perfect situation, we'd love to talk with bands before they come in about not even just the gear or the sounds they're looking for, but also the song structure, the arrangement of the songs, what songs maybe they want to bring in, or maybe they have a batch of 15 songs and they're not sure which ones to do. You know, we could listen to all of them with them, and either it could be remote or they could come to the studio and we can do that. Jeff has a really great ear for, arrangement ideas and kind of the story of the song. And I think during those meetings, people get more comfortable because they understand that we really care about the song, and that's what's most important, is serving the song and what's going to do that, and hoping to set egos aside with that stuff, and then making it a safe place where you can have ideas, throw ideas out there. But if it doesn't end up working, if we try something during tracking and it's clearly not working, that's part of having so many hours of doing this, is you have the instinct to know, like, I don't think that's working. Let's try something else, or let's move on, rather than like laboring over something that's not working and feeling bad that it doesn't work. It's like, it's just an idea. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So that it can be just talking about song arrangement, which songs we're going to do. It can be talking about how we want to record things. Do we want to record everything live? Do we want to do a click, no click? So really talking about every part of the process kind of before a band gets into the studio, which I think sometimes gets overlooked, or bands just think, this is how I play live, so I'm just going to go into a studio, they'll set up mics, and they're just going to record what I do live.
That's valid.
Yeah, which is a way to do it. But I think if you're looking to sound like a more produced record, that isn't necessarily, most of the time how you go about it. So just talking about what bands are comfortable with in terms of how we want to record things too, I think is important before the session starts.
And I've probably said something like this a million times to all the bands we work with, but I like to think of it like we're building roller coasters for your audience, like what's going to thrill them, like we want, and this is within the songs, within the recordings, and what's going to make those big drops. Are we going to, those kind of like breaths, you want to give space, suspense, and then you want to like kill them too. So fireworks displays, I think of fireworks and I think of roller coasters. I think of movies a lot, like how a plot will, move along and, keep people engaged for the time that we're in the movie theater or whatever, and apply that to how we approach the band song. And try to give a really enjoyable and memorable experience and a repeatable experience. Which makes me sound a little capitalist just there. I didn't like that. Sorry. Can we get that out of there? I'm not trying to sell experiences, man. But I want to have a great experience. I just want to feel good.
Mm-hmm. Well, pre-production too, do you run into the issue a lot where bands are so stuck on what they've been hearing as they're writing songs and going through practice, where it's hard for them to take criticism or even suggestions on how to change a song to make it better? Do you get a lot of pushback?
It depends on the artist, really.
It depends, yeah.
And yeah, it can vary pretty wildly. But we're respectful of that. I mean, sometimes someone might just have a pretty strong vision of what they want to do, and that's cool too.
Yeah.
And in those pre-production sessions, talking about Jeff, we also try to talk about what our role is going to be in terms of, I think, in modern music production, any studio engineer is doing some level of producing. Very little engineers just kind of have mics set up, have a band roll their stuff in, and just hit record and don't give any feedback. So I think even if you're not getting producing credit, most engineers in modern music are doing some level of producing. So we try to talk about that up front, about how much involvement they're going to want during the session. Also, if it is maybe like a singer-songwriter session, or even Jeff plays on a lot of records with bands too, where he might have an idea, talking about it at that stage rather than while we're tracking, I think is important. But Jeff plays drums, bass, guitar, keys. He can play, most things really well. And that's always kind of been part of the studio. I mean, originally I started the studio with my brother-in-law, Mark, and one of my best friends, Marty. And Marty is an amazing musician too, and a multi-instrumentalist, and he's played on so many projects too and added his touch to them as well. So collaboration's always been a big part of the studio, and I think most bands appreciate that when they come in. So,
and when you met Jeff, I mean, you brought him into the fold, and Jeff, you live on site.
Yeah.
For you, do you find yourself being a band babysitter sometimes?
A band babysitter?
like after the session.
Oh, I mean, not so much. Not so much. Bands usually do their own thing. Which is not to say I just like close my door and just like get away from me. I'm never like that. But yeah, they tended to do their own thing. There is plenty of space.
Yeah.
And
I think because we work primarily off referrals, most of the bands we work with are really cool, and they get our vibe and what we're doing, and they're really respectful of the space.
Yeah.
So we haven't, maybe in the early days, I had a couple sessions where it was a little touchy, like polka band coming in, drinking a case of Boone's Farm liquor, and that kind of thing.
I wouldn't have guessed the polka band was the band type creating the issues, but I guess polka bands can be pretty unruly.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. This one definitely was, though. It was like total disrespect for anything we'd say. It was like, all right, whatever. But that was like the first year the studio was open, and a couple other projects. But since then, it's been, I haven't really noticed any issues. People have been really respectful and awesome about the building and the equipment, and just, our time, respectful on kind of all fronts. So.
And then again, one of the unique things about Honeytone is you're recording in this very historic Victorian mansion, but you also have free reign of the house. You've got a full kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
You've got all the comforts of being in a home, just steps away from where you're tracking. So I know some bands probably get down to work, and they're focusing on getting the music done, and there's probably other bands that when they're done recording, clock out and it's party time.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I feel like a lot of times it depends on the band members too. Like within a band, sometimes there's people where you start the next day and you can tell people got a good night's rest, and then someone's saying they were at the bar till 4 a.m. You're like, okay, well, that was your choice, I guess. We'll see how today goes for you. But yeah, it can totally vary that way.
Yeah, it can vary. There have been bands that kind of book the session for the weekend, and it's sort of like their guys' weekend, so they bring a cooler of beer and and it's all good. It's fun. And there was another session where the people that came I think we had there was an external external producer,
Mm-hmm.
and we just assisted with the session, and they actually brought a chef with them. All weekend was like making all the meals, and that was almost like kind of like a ski vacation in a way.
Yeah, that session was amazing.
Yeah,
it was pretty great. At the end of the day, there'd be a meal. The chef was making a meal in the kitchen the whole day. So that's available if you hire your own chef. Just putting that out there to bands. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You guys also have it's almost like a record label, a Honeytone record label, don't you?
Yeah, it's not as active anymore, but I used to do single song, record deals with bands where they'd come in and essentially we'd cover all the costs for production and things and do the digital distribution and then split things 50-50, but not doing that as much anymore, but kind of shifting to do more singles with a band. So if there's a band where maybe they don't have the budget, I'd still say reach out to me, and, if we can make things work and you can be flexible on maybe working around some of our other sessions, we could maybe do something at a discount, but not doing as much of the single. I just don't have as much time. And if I'm going to do something, I want to do it right. And if a band's trusting me to do, signing even as a one song single, I want to be able to have the time to put into that. So it's not totally out of the picture, and we still have a back catalog, and I'd like to find a way to do something with that and partner with someone. So I'm kind of always keeping my ear to the ground for that, but not doing as much of that anymore.
You've got such an arsenal of equipment there. As far as bands, when they're booking a session, they come in to set up. Is the setup time part of the set day time, or is that included?
It's part of usually the time. So if we're starting at 10, that's where everyone comes in and we start setting up and things like that. So, but I mean,
and you've got a nice drum set there.
Yeah, so we keep our drums set up. So certain things are set up, and also if a band is booking more than one day, like if their session starts at 10, I usually have them, especially if they're coming out of town, I have them come in the day before so they get an extra night and they can load in. So at least their equipment's all there and kind of getting acclimated to the temperature and stuff. And then we'll set up in the morning. But we don't really like there's certain vibes at a studio where you just have like your mics are set up, a band will come in, you'll roll in, and you just push your mics in. We like to kind of tailor every session specifically to what sounds the band is looking for. But wherever we can have stuff set up to kind of minimize setup time, so we have long cable runs. So like if we're live tracking, the amps are in the kitchen with the doors closed and we don't get any drum bleed or bass bleed or any guitars in the drums. So there's really good isolation that way. So we have the boxes set up for that and all the cable runs to kind of minimize time. So anywhere we can be efficient with time, we try to. But anything that can compromise kind of the creative process over efficiency, we always pick the creative process. So, like I said, we try to be as efficient as possible.
There are some we have a standard kind of go-to drum miking setup, but
that we'll leave up. But if we do pre-production, talk to a band,
exactly,
we can change it.
We can change it up, and we will change it up if the drummer starts playing and be like, oh, I think a different mic here on the snare would be better, or different placement. And we always have the drummer come in and adjust the drum set to what they are comfortable with, like heights and stuff. So the mics aren't in the way in that respect.
Yeah, and that's important too, I think. We always try to accommodate the musician and what's comfortable for them. So even for drummers, we'll have them set everything up the way we want, and then we'll figure out how to get the mics in around them. Sometimes, very rarely, you ask them to move something just because there's not enough physical space, but usually we can just work around whatever they're comfortable with.
But I will usually tune the drums before a band comes in, at least to a standard thing where the kit's in tune with itself, and then we can adjust.
Which is a pretty valuable service.
I love doing it. I've spent thousands of hours messing around with that I've gotten pretty good at it.
Makes a big difference in the track too. Like if I'm mixing and the drum sound is a good way there just from tracking, which we try to do a lot of that up front. Yeah. We don't do a lot of like processing when we're tracking, but more at the source, like picking the right amp, the right guitar, making sure the performance is good. And then capturing that in a musical way is more important than going through a ton of EQ and compressors and things like that. So,
well, I know that you guys like to have teams of two typically working. Are you guys working together a lot on most of the projects, or outside people coming in?
It's pretty much always Jeff and I right now. Like I said, Marty has been involved since the beginning, just hasn't been as involved lately, but hopefully we'll, be involved again at some point. If we get an outside producer, sometimes it'll just be me working with the producer engineering. But a lot of times it's Jeff and I too.
Yeah.
We pretty much always do the sessions together just because I think it's a better workflow and it's easier and it gets things done faster for the band also. And then we kind of have, even though there's a lot of crossover, we kind of have our specialties. Like when we're tracking, Jeff is kind of more in production and producing role, which he'll still take ideas if I have them, and then I'll kind of be more on the engineering side, which if he has ideas on that, I'm open to taking him too. But, we kind of both do both things.
Yeah.
But it's also nice if you're doing a longer stretch of sessions day after day. Sometimes I can be at the console driving, other times Jeff can
switch out.
If you need a little bit of a break, keeping a fresh ear, so we are always kind of listening for those takes and making sure we're getting the best take. So,
Patrick, I know that you toured with a band and played in a band. You both have, but I know that when did you realize that playing and touring in a band, specifically touring in a band, wasn't for you?
The first time I was gone for almost 4 months and missed my first wedding anniversary. So, it's not like the studio doesn't take up a lot of time, and I'm sure sometimes my family wished it took up less of my time, but at least it's more flexible and I'm around and I'm only, I live very close to the studio. But yeah, just being out on the road, I've also just drawn more to the production side of music, and the studio fascinates me in capturing sound and creating sounds. I still play guitar for fun, but I haven't been in a band in a long time. But yeah, that tour, well, it was a lot of fun and it was a cool band. I was kind of like assistant tour managing and then playing some guitar with the opening band for the rentals. And then Golden Boy was opening. And so, as the tour went on, they're like, yeah, you should come play guitar on a couple of songs, which is thrilling for me because I didn't start playing guitar until I was like a senior in high school. And so that was my first kind of like playing out, and it was like sometimes bigger crowds, and I'd get to run from the merch booth to the stage and then back and forth. So it was fun. And then I was also setting up all the gear. The drums would get set up, but then everything else, I was kind of doing the wiring and checking for ground loops and phase and different things like that. So that part I enjoyed. But yeah, it just got to be a lot. And like, I don't know, the kind of monotony of every day blending into each other on the road and like going to places but not really seeing the places, didn't really fascinate me. Like it was cool because I'd save my per diem every day and I'd just eat the free food in the green room, and I put that towards gear. So I still have awesome. A lot of the gear I got from that tour, at the studio, things. I have good memories from that, but pretty much, yeah, during that tour I was like, this I don't think is really right for me and my personality. So that's kind of when I decided more to focus on the studio side of things. So
You've got 2 daughters and a wife. Are they active music fans? Did they listen to
oh yeah,
some of the
my
projects?
wife Katie is the coolest person I know, and she usually turns me on to cool music, or she'll turn me on to it and then I won't listen to it at first, and then I'll listen and be like, oh, this band's cool, and she'll be like, yeah, that's the band I told you about like a month ago or 2 months ago. So anything cool that I find out about is through her. Like an obvious example is Beyonce. She's always really liked Beyonce, and I got into like Lemonade, but then haven't really listened to a ton of it. But we went to her show this past year and like blew my mind, and I've become like a huge Beyonce fan and like listening to a ton of it. But she's always been, cool on Beyonce and knew what was up. Obviously, she's like one of the most popular artists in the world, but like I don't know. There's a certain just like earnestness to everything she does and artistic kind of credibility that she does too, which being at that level kind of in the pop world is kind of crazy to me. But anyways, yeah, my girls like music too. They're both in choir. They don't play any instruments yet. But yeah, there definitely is music going on in our house all the time. And my wife is a fiber artist, and so she's often listening to music while she's working. And sometimes she'll even listen to a song on repeat and create a piece based on that piece. So yeah, so Katie Boland Design, if you ever want to check out her work. So
it's interesting what you said about respecting Beyonce more after seeing her perform. There's got to be bands coming through the studio like that, because you're actually, when you go to a concert, you have to sit there and watch and pay attention. When somebody's at the studio recording, you're focusing more on the intricate pieces of how a song or how a band is playing. Have a lot of bands won you over after you worked with them?
I don't know. I kind of find the opposite. I feel like when you're working in the studio, you get to know a band on such an intimate level. And Jeff will often joke, because he does a lot of the editing, that he like knows people by their waveforms. So it's like you kind of get a glimpse of who they are in a different way than seeing them live. You may not get the energy of live, but sometimes that can be a disconnect for bands too. Like if they haven't done a lot of studio work where they feel a certain way when they're playing live, and then hearing back something in a recording that's recorded really well can be a little shocking, because it's like, that's not what we sound like. But it's like, well, you don't really listen to yourself playing necessarily, or if you do, it's like maybe not as clear of a recording, so you don't hear it as clear. So I wouldn't say there's ever been a band for me where it took seeing them live to totally get them or not. But I don't know. Oh, what about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about that, because it is really interesting, like having someone's music under the microscope. In one way, you kind of create this intimate connection with where they're coming from in the music, and that is kind of a beautiful thing. But also, because we're like kind of like surgeons operating on it, it's almost like we can't, I don't know how to articulate that. We can't, they're no longer like just like a regular band that you see. And not that it ruins it. I'm not trying to say that, but it's like, I
guess it's kind of like working in a factory and seeing how something's made.
Yeah, a little bit. But we're not like stuffing the songs with artificial pig guts or whatever. Pig butts.
New in 2026, the Honeytone pig guts package. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I get what you're saying, though. It just changes how you view it and how you...
Yeah. Or you kind of have to actively be in a different mindset of a music listener versus the audio engineer.
I will say, seeing it live is nicer sometimes because you didn't work on that performance. You know, anything I've worked on, you listen to it in a different way than if it's something you didn't work on. I mean, in some ways it's harder for me to appreciate it because I'm always, just like any musician's critical, I'm always critical of any work I've done, or like, oh, I could have done this better or done that better. But there's definitely certain things I've worked on where you can be totally at peace with it, but that's pretty rare. But I think that's part of doing art in general and just growing as a person and always evolving and changing is, you know, it's not a static thing or like a target to reach. It's just an ongoing journey that you're always on. So
this is kind of a topic change, but you did some stuff at the Refuge a long time ago with the Head and the Heart.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was actually taking your gear out there to the chapel. And can you tell me a little bit about how that came about and what? Well,
I think it was kind of sold as like, oh, we have a studio on site, but they didn't necessarily. And that's not to be a dig against them, but like, so they contacted me about partnering up and bringing the studio out there. And so, yeah, that was a lot of fun. So talked to the engineer that was working with the head and the heart at the time, and then brought in just the equipment that they thought they would need. And they were really cool. And even though they could have just said thanks for the gear, like I kind of assisted during the whole session, and they were cool about taking any input I had. So they were all super nice people, and that was a great experience. So cool thing too is it was supposed to be, I think, kind of demo sessions for the record, but they ended up liking so much of what Scott, their engineer, did that they used a lot of it on the record. So they even credited me on the record, which I thought was really cool of them because, you know, they don't really know me, and it's not like I was running the session or something. So it was just cool to get some recognition for that too, and, you know, I appreciated that a lot.
How big of a hassle was it to move all that stuff out to the chapel?
It was a bit of a hassle, and I also bought some additional stuff just for the session, like converters and things, so I wasn't ripping out the heart of the studio. So if we had to do some stuff while that was going on at the studio, we were still operational. So it was worth it, though. It was a lot of fun. I'm always kind of fascinated by remote recording, and I talk about doing it more often, but we usually don't do a lot of it. So that was cool. It was a way to do it, even though that's their space. For me, it was a remote recording because I was taking stuff there and, you know, working in different rooms with familiar gear, but, you know, unfamiliar spaces. So,
Jeff, you've been into music for quite a while. I know that you credit I think a couple movies as being the Bill and Ted and Terminator 2.
Huge, what kind of got you summer for me, man. Just the air guitar really spoke to me, and it was the second one I saw before the first one, which is a strange thing, but yeah, the air guitar in that. And the way that whole movie ends with they finally they travel back in time to learn how to play, and then they play the concert. I thought that was so awesome. And Terminator 2 was the biggest movie of that summer in '91, and it was. And Guns N' Roses had that tie-in single.
You Could Be Mine, right?
Yeah, with Arnold in the video, Waste of Ammo, GNR. So good. And that was sort of. I think I was already buying some cassette tapes at that time, but when the GNR rollout, I bought it because Arnold was on the cover, the cassette single. But then the double album came out, and my dad bought this Use Your Illusion 2 for me, just the one CD first, and he saw the parental advisory sticker, and it's like, I gotta listen to this. And then he listened to it and he heard Get in the Ring, and he's like, you're not listening to this. I'm like, what do you mean? I like it. And he took it away, and I couldn't listen to it. And that just fueled my hunger for GNR even more. I knew where he was hiding it. So and he was an ER surgeon, so he worked long hours. So I could, when he was still at work, I went to the hidey spot and would listen to Use Your Illusion 2 with headphones on.
That's awesome.
But they probably knew I was listening because I was probably mimicking Axl, and they could hear it in my room.
I mean, at that point, they were kind of everywhere, though, too. So it's like you could have at least heard it on the radio or something, or seen it on MTV. But
I was obsessed, and had started playing acoustic guitar and just wanted to learn those solos. So guitar magazines and tab books and all that stuff, pentatonic scales, and just obsessed. As soon as I started playing electric guitar, and by coincidence, I did. My first electric guitar was a Les Paul Slash, so I was just the stars are aligned, and this is what I'm gonna do now, and it has never stopped.
Yeah, still as obsessed today, I would say. It may be more so. But.
You may be. Yeah.
Well, and you do all the guitar tech stuff at Honeytone, so if somebody needs a guitar adjustment or something, you can do that in-house.
Yeah, totally. I have a work desk set up in my room, and that came about maybe in the 2000s, and I was playing out live a lot more back then. And I would just abuse my jazz master, and it just got too expensive to keep on taking to the shop and fix this. So I just started reading up on, and getting tools a little bit at a time, and just started learning how to do my own setups. And kind of, what is the word when you're not afraid anymore? You demystify stuff like taking the neck off of a guitar and adjusting the truss rod, because everyone says don't adjust the truss rod, you'll break it. But it's actually, if you're careful, it's totally doable. And I'm happy to teach anyone too, because it's we should demystify this stuff, even though I would love to get paid money for it.
Well, and you do take on work, so he has a side business too of repairing guitars
Yeah,
or modding guitars. So
exactly.
mostly electric at this point.
Yeah,
Can
mostly
do some basic acoustic setups, but
yeah, truss rod and action stuff.
But on electrics, I mean, anything from pickup changes.
Yeah,
to
we've done a lot
fixing
of
wiring.
pickup changes. As soon as I moved here, like we would get a guitar in and see like, does this need anything cool? Or we would see something cool online and be like, let's try that in this guitar. And so we've done a lot of that. Yeah.
How did Patrick sell it to you to move here? Was that his idea or your idea?
Well, this is a funny thing. It was a couple of years before I moved out there, but there was a Facebook kind of like challenge or whatever going around, like 10 dream jobs, list them, as your status. And one of them was to, operate a remote, a destination studio, I think I called it. And I imagined myself either in the woods or like in the mountains or something like that, working at my own recording studio for bands to come and visit. And then I had already met Patrick, but he was like, we should talk. And then, we got talking and he put the offer out there. And I had a home studio at the time in my parents' basement. And it was kind of like a miniature Honeytone because we had similar tastes. I mean, the collection wasn't as huge as the Honeytone collection by any means, but our tastes were definitely similar. So it was like kind of like going for a similar aesthetic. Mm-hmm. In a way, a sonic aesthetic anyway. But the offer was out there to move to Honeytone, but he never put any pressure. And it was something that I slowly realized I needed to do and wanted to do because on my own studio was never going to be what Honeytone is. And I kept on being like, oh, if only I could work at Honeytone more, or like if only I had this thing that Honeytone has. And he would also contact me to do remote work, and I would record tracks at my place and then send them to him. And
sometimes even fly in.
Sometimes I'd fly in for sessions, for a couple of days, and that was always fun. And at the time, I was working a pretty good job that allowed me to keep building my home studio, and so I was kind of like stuck in that kind of cycle for a while. Even though I had the intention to move out to Honeytone eventually. And then one time, I think it was in the summer 2018, I was flying out to Honeytone for a session, and my job called while I was on the plane and be like, oh, we just got bought, we're done. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm just going to move to Honeytone. And then only took a couple months after that, after that job folded. And it was like no longer keeping me in New York. I mean, I love New York and I love my family there, but, I really wanted to be at Honeytone for a while. So it didn't take that much convincing at all.
Well, now you're immersed in the studio and then you're working on an EP that... Yeah. When do you plan to finish that, and what kind of sound is it? Oh,
it's been a long time coming because I've been doing before I moved here, and I was for years in my home studio trying to do it on my own, like this box set of my solo material, which never really like came together. It was always just a mess and constant procrastination and all that stuff, and also feeling like I couldn't play the songs like I wanted them to be played, and. It took that time to learn to be able to play them, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. So we've been doing singles for a couple years now, not really often enough, and that's on me.
Like the two of us working on Jeff's stuff.
So I'll play everything, and Patrick will produce and engineer it and mix it. But I'm mostly on the more like artist side. I'll do the editing and stuff, but kind of like leave it to Patrick to mix it and stuff like that. The new EP, I mean, it's guitar-based songs. I think it comes from a lineage of alternative music because I grew up in the 90s. I love Sonic Youth, Elliott Smith, and Slash, of course. There's some elements there. But some 2000s too. I mean, I love Rilo Kiley.
Yeah.
I think there are elements in that all over the place in my music. The one I don't really talk about is I really love Bright Eyes, but he's sort of controversial because he's all emotional and stuff. it was, I mean, it wasn't never a secret, but it's just something I don't really talk about with people.
I mean, you talk about it with me, I think, because I am not a huge Conor Oberst fan. Like, I can appreciate his music. So.
Yeah, but that is Mike Mogus. He's in Bright Eyes. He's the producer of those records. That when I started listening to records from the point of view of production, that those records in particular, like around 2000 to 2005, that Mike Mogus was doing, including the Rilo Kiley records from that time, that really made me focus on like what is going on in the recordings here, and kind of shifted my perspective when listening to music to like kind of take into account like what sounds are happening rather than what is just being played. So that was like kind of like an important part of my musical DNA. And I think that carries through to what I do in my solo stuff, and also what we do with other artists too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So would your release be on the Honeytone?
Oh, I just usually
he just puts it out on his own.
just put it out on my own. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not really too interested in running a label at this point. There's not enough hours in the day, so.
And is there one piece of equipment at the studio that is besides the board, the Neve?
Sure.
Board, that's the go-to piece, it seems like, when bands come in that they gravitate towards?
I don't know. What would you say?
That artists gravitate towards?
Like they notice or comment on?
Yeah, that they see and they like, I have to use that.
I'm not sure, really.
I don't know if it's any one piece of gear.
Yeah,
I think in general the amp wall is kind of like something when you walk in that people see, and they usually pick out an amp or two that they want to try or something.
And also the outboard wall in the control room. I don't think they're actually focused on one piece, but they're kind of dazzled. It's like kind of seeing the New York skyline for the first time, like when you're in a plane or something.
There's a pile of stuff in there.
Yeah.
A few things.
Pile of stuff. It's gotten taller. I need to get on a thing. Patrick's tall for those of
luckily
you
I'm
at home.
6'7", so I can reach the tall stuff there. But
You guys have done so much stuff there that I'm still finding out about. I mean, I love Spy vs. Spy, and I found out you guys did some Spy vs. Spy way back. Sherry Lane put out a great album a year or two ago. I think it was really a year ago, and you guys did that there.
Yeah, Justin was awesome in that. He was in a previous band and had come into the studio to do some tracking, and he kind of talked to the Sherry Lane guys and brought them in, and he's been a big champion of the studio, and Tyler from Sherry Lane too has been really great about spreading the word, which we greatly appreciate, so thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And of course, we talked a little bit about like Amos. You did Dusk stuff. Amos has been in there, just like Frank,
kind of
for
like
sessions.
at the beginning of Dusk, which was kind of fun capturing them. Kind of almost sounds like a 70s, like not AM, but a little bit like Restricted Band with kind of a vibe. We were kind of going for something that sounded a little older sounding, but turned out pretty cool. Yeah,
and I think the joint Christmas single was my first session, like with a outside band.
Yep.
With
Amos did a song and Julia did a song on there. It
or
sounds
after
like double single.
After I had moved, I mean. Yeah, the first one. That was so much fun, that Christmas single.
Well, it's such the atmosphere we talked about. Also for photography and videography there, Julia Blair did a music video there, and I'm sure there's more than just Julia that took advantage of that space visually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been a bunch of people who've done videos, and we just had a photo shoot there recently too, and we're doing a demo for an amp called the Sparrow. Our friend Ethan's helping us out with that. I shot the video with my phone and was just going to try to edit that, but I'm like, Jeff wrote a song and we recorded it, and it's like I kind of wanted it to be at the level of what the song and the recording was, so we got some help with the video. So we tried to do a time lapse of our pond, and it was terrible. It was an epic fail, but it was one of those things where like, I don't know, until you try it, you don't know. It was like there's these lilies in the pond, and I assumed that they open and close like at sunset, but it like earlier in the summer that's when it was happening, but I guess that part of the summer it was closing like well after dark. So like I just left my phone out there on time lapse forever, and you'd come back and it's just like the plant like shaking in the water but never closing, and then it's like 10 p.m. it finally closes. You're like, oh great, thanks a lot. So there's a lot of unusable footage, or maybe we'll put something like David Lynch inspired together someday with it, but right now it's not going to be in that video. So
how do you keep yourself reined in so you don't take on too much? You mentioned you're not really doing the label as much now because of the lack of hours. There's got to be other things you want to do at the studio, or a wish list of things that you'd like to do in the future. How do you keep yourself from overextending yourself?
I'm try to be good at that. I'm not always the best.
I think he is overextended. Truthfully.
So my
there.
wife is pretty good about telling me that, like in a gentle way and a nice way. But yeah, it's always kind of a battle of, for me, it's like whenever I think things are going good, it's usually because one area is going good, but then maybe I'm not being as good in the other area, which isn't super fun, even though I'm laughing. But, it's definitely a challenge. So.
Well, if you spend any time at the studio, you'll notice your mineral collection all over the place. That's one of your passions outside of music is collecting minerals, which I think is a unique thing.
Yeah, that's something that I really love. As a kid, my aunt and uncle took me to a gem show, and I got one of those egg crate things that they always hand out, which they still do, which is pretty cool. It just has different gems in the crates and like ID cards. And then really didn't do much with the hobby most of my life. And then maybe like, 8 or 9 years ago, my wife and I were in the Dells, and we were in a mineral shop, and there was a piece of blueberry that kind of caught our attention. And that kind of ignited it for me, where I was interested more in like, maybe once a year if we were at a shop, I'd add a piece to the collection. So it's kind of a slow burn. And then during the pandemic, all the major mineral shows shut down. And so there was this huge creation of online communities where you'd have access to material that you don't really see in most mineral shops, at least locally. And it was kind of like mind-blowing and eye-opening what's out there and learning more about it. And so my collection's grown kind of exponentially. And then my brother has gotten into the hobby with me, and he kind of urged me into doing some regional club shows, like selling in person. So first it was just collecting, but now we are doing some shows. We started just doing the Doty Island rummage sale, which is a lot of fun. So we just set up a couple tables and we'd sell during the rummage. And then now I have like glass cases and lights. I mean, kind of for better or worse, if I do anything, I'm like...
Yeah, it's kind of like the studio now.
Like I'm like all in. I just like, I have a vision of something and I want to realize that vision. So... yeah, so we got into, I think, we were in our first show in the Oshkosh show last year, but we got into 2 or 3 more shows this year. So with that, also trying to keep it, reasonable, not doing too many shows that way. So I'd love to get into the Madison show, but that some of these shows you put in for a wait list, and it's like some of them we've been on the list for 3 years, and you contact them, they're like, oh yeah, you're coming up soon. But then, they're like, okay, well, it's been 3 years. Could you tell me where I'm at on the list? Crickets. So it's interesting. It's hard to get into the shows. It's kind of like they want newer people coming in, but it's kind of a closed system in a way. So, but it's been a great hobby, and it's a great community, and I've met a lot of really great people doing it, and interesting people, and it's fun because it's kind of like music. You can never know it all. There's so much to learn about minerals. I don't begrudge anyone who's into the metaphysical side. I think that's an interesting side, and I do think for me, handling a rock, like the color of it, the tactileness makes you feel a certain way and definitely can be relaxing or make you feel energized. But I don't think it's like this rock makes you rich, this rock, will protect you or things for me. But that's not to say that other people can't tap into that stuff.
And artists who do notice the mineral collection, some people just walk past and don't even see it. But the people who do notice are always like, oh, that's why it feels so positive in here.
Yeah, totally. Which
I wasn't mimicking anyone specifically.
But I do get that vibe, though. Like it does, to me, it does bring a certain positivity. Than if there's just a bunch of like plates or something in the display, like having the minerals. I think in there, like I said, just looking at color makes you feel something. Just like listening to music makes you feel something. So they do definitely affect you in a certain way. But yeah, it's been an awesome hobby, and I can nerd out about rocks like music gear for hours. So sometimes I always have to check in with bands if they start talking. I'm like, just tell me to shut up if I'm going on too long about it. But to me, too, each piece is like a work of art. It's amazing, and some of them are like 100 million years old, and you think about all the conditions that had to be right for it to form, and now you're holding it in your hand.
That's kind of the stuff I think about it when I'm looking at them.
Yeah.
And it like reminds me of when I went to the Grand Canyon with my dad on a road trip and just staring out at like this ancient natural thing, and you sort of get into sort of existential thoughts. I feel like that's a good place to play music.
Yeah, for sure.
When you get into that and you like kind of shed your everyday reality in a way. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
We had a comment here from Chris McRae, who you might know. He said, these guys are absolute studs.
Whoa.
How does it feel to be absolute studs?
I don't know. I definitely don't think of myself that way, so I appreciate the comment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you sure it didn't say duds? Are you reading that right? Absolute duds, maybe? I don't
Dudes, maybe, and he misspelled it.
know. Maybe.
So if people are interested, they're looking for a place to record in the Valley, or even if you're from out of town and you're looking for a place, what do people have to do to get in contact with you guys?
Yeah, just check out the website or our Instagram. So at Honeytone Music is the Instagram. You can DM me there, or honeytonemusic.com is the website, and my contact info is on there. My number's on there, and you can feel free to text me as well. Yeah, and there's a contact form. I do have people include their phone number because for some reason the contact form when I reply sometimes goes to people's junk mail, which I found out luckily. So I'll usually, if you send me a message via the website, I'll usually respond via email and then also text you just letting you know that I sent it. Not to kind of braid you with too many messages, but just to make sure you're getting the message. So.
And Jeff, we look forward to your EP, or
hopefully this
coming
year.
out.
Maybe by summertime, I'm thinking.
Great. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming in today. Your studio was, again, you have to go in there and see it. And I'm so thankful that you guys are responsible for a lot of the great music coming out of the Fox Cities. Thank you for contributing so much to the scene. Go check these guys out. Honeytone Studios. Patrick and Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Appreciate it.